So I think we should move out of the complex web that is intellectual property and copyright and move into some discussion about technology. Obviously, we're using it at the moment to be able to distribute this. But what is your opinion on integrating technology with board games themselves?
So I think that there's huge potential here. So when I'm thinking of integrating technology, I'm thinking of making technology like a key part of the game itself, not necessarily the way in which you might play it, although you could interpret it that way. But in terms of implementing technology into the game itself, I've not really seen a game really nail that yet. Um, Certainly, I can't think of any off the top of my head. I'm sure people will correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but I do think that there's huge opportunity there, and I think it's only a matter of time before someone does come up with something, and we'll all be kicking ourselves thinking, why didn't I think of that? I have seen certain games use technology to help make their game more accessible, or to reduce some of the management around it. So I referred to Kingdom Death Monster earlier. I've seen a companion app for that makes it easier to manage, what your settlement currently looks like, and all that inventory stuff that you don't really want to be focusing on while you're trying to play the game. So I've seen it implemented really well in that sense. But in terms of it actually being a core part of the gameplay, it's not something I've seen. I do think, I mean, the first thing that springs to mind, when I heard your question was some sort of tablet or a phone or something like that, and how that could work. I think there's a challenge, there's an inherent challenge there, in that whenever you divert, or whenever you ask a player to divert their attention away from the people around them, away from the table, and onto a screen, you do lose something in that experience, and I think that's a challenge. But I do think it can be overcome for sure, and I think it's only a matter of time.
I think I'm going to jump in a little bit because you talking about companion apps. Gloomhaven is almost unplayable without the companion app, in my personal opinion. I'm sure I will get raked over the coals for that, but I think as we become more familiar and we find technology more integrated with our lives, so too with our application of it in games. So at one stage, using an iPad for a game was something that we would never dream of, because you would have to pick up this thing and install another thing, and there was such a barrier of entry. But that barrier of entry was because there was a barrier of entry to the technology in the first place. The more that we use our phones, and we're holding our phones all the time, the more reflexive it is for us to just reach for a companion app and use those things. So there are games like Mansions of Madness, for example, which I think use them really, really well. But like Kris says, there is always going to be that slightly odd facade that's put up between you. I think really also it's worth considering what the spirit of the question is. The spirit of the question I assumed to be digital technology, but actually technology is exactly the thing that's been driving games since the beginning of time, because technology isn't necessarily digital. Technology is the plastic that we're using to print our cards on Mystic Veil. Mystic Veil having clear transparencies to make stackable cards, that's a technology. And the second that got opened up as a play space, and I appreciate Gloom did that years before, but the second that opened up as a play space, that technology helped forward games and people started iterating on that. So that goes for everything. That goes from something like Keys to the Kingdom, which has a board that folds. That is a technology. If you want to look at tessellating tiles, like with a Tetris style game, like that is a technology. Those things are what we iterate on to create new things all the time. And actually, if you want to take a very simple, this is a board and we're moving pieces around on it, almost no games are that anymore, because we've incorporated so much technology. It's just that the technology is something that's become ubiquitous in games that we've forgotten that once upon a time it was just a surface that had squares drawn on it.